name's Neil Burley. Welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to show you how I made this stenciled card for Creative Expressions. First of all, I want to mask off the areas of the stencil that I won't be using, and for this I've got some wide low tack tape from a well-known DIY store. And basically any areas that you don't want the ink accidentally going through, just make sure are covered. I've then got some specialist stencil tape that I'm going to put around the edges just to help hold it in place once we put it down on the card, and this is even lower tack so that it won't pull up any of the card. So I'm now getting my perfect medium ink pad and my sheet of A4 craft card, and I'm just going to pop that on the corner, stick it down, and then using the perfect medium, because the pad's so hard, I'm going to use a piece of cut and dry foam, which if you dab onto the ink pad, get nice and wet, we can now press through the stencil onto the card behind. If you use the pad on its own, it's not soft enough to get through the stencil, and you'll end up with areas that aren't inked. Where you have inked will go slightly darker on the card, and we'll see that better shortly when I remove the stencil. So keep going over the areas, just making sure you're pressing the ink firmly through the stencil, and once all areas are darker, you know there's plenty there to be sticking to the embossing powder. There we go, we'll pop that away, and then as we peel away the stencil, you'll see the areas that have been inked. And if we now bring in a sheet of clean paper, get the lid off the embossing powder, and I'm just going to tip that over the inked areas, pour off the excess onto the sheet behind, give it a quick tap, and any areas that have extra on, I'm just going to brush off very gently using my tweezers. You could use a dry brush as well. And that's now ready for heat setting. I have my heat tool. It's one of the low speed Ranger heated tools. So I tend to heat my embossing powder from above. It is possible to heat from below as well. And what I'm going to try and do is show you as it changes. This is the detail white embossing powder, so it won't have a very deep raise, but you should see it still change from a powder to a glossy smooth surface. Hold the heat tool still over a point until you start to see it change. Which is now happening at the tip there. And once you see it change, follow the change with the heat tool. So what you can see here is that was a slightly see-through powder is now a shiny paint-like opaque smooth surface. Now all we need to do is repeat it for the other four corners to get our central motif. So I'm going to use the see-through nature of the stencil tape to line up with the previous motif, and because it's embossing powder and it's cool, it's now set and won't shift at all. And I'm going to repeat the same process as before, inking the perfect medium through the stencil. I'm going to carry on and do this for the other two sides as well. Just a quick note about cleaning the perfect medium off the stencil. I use the Grindboss hand wipes, which are just amazing when it comes to removing sticky stuff. They stay moist for ages. They've got this rough side and a smooth side to the wipe. They're not your average hand wipe at all, and they're perfect for cleaning the perfect medium from the stencil and indeed your craft sheet. Just make sure you do both sides. They stay wet for ages, so when you're finished, just find a Ziploc poly bag and pop it in there, and then you can use it again for future projects. So this is the completed grid, and what I've done is use a guillotine to cut it down to size, which is 5 3/4 inches square, and then I've used a 1 inch corner rounder just to round the corners off. Now going to mount that onto a piece of the dark roast ground coffee card, and for that I'm going to use the fabulous Cosmic Shimmer Specialist acrylic glue, and all I need to do is just squeeze a small amount around the outside of my craft card, quick squiggle into the middle, and then I'm going to carefully line it up and then smooth it down. And the glue does allow a little bit of time to move it, and if you want it to slide you need to put a little bit more glue on, but it does grab fairly quickly, and as you can see it doesn't lead to any buckling of the card. Finally I'm going to, on the mounting side anyway, I'm going to mount it onto this crinkle edge 8-inch square card. The dark brown card I cut to 6 inches square. And pop that down there and then press and smooth, and you can see how quickly that glue grabs. Hold it in position for a moment and there we go. Finally I'm just going to add the PVA embellishments. I've already marked off one side, so I'm going to use a Tim Holtz ruler just to square up my center line where the dots will go, and mark the center, and then where every line is, which is every 1/4 inch, with a pencil, and those dots are going to be covered by the PVA. There we go. So I used the centering ruler so that I could get the dots equidistant from the middle on both axes. Take a scrap bit of card and just check that your PVA hasn't gummed up. This one has. So what I'm going to do is take out the centre nozzle by slipping your tweezers or your thumbnail underneath. Get a trusty pin and push it through from the base, and then that way anything that gets stuck in the nozzle doesn't then get stuck again if you were to push it the other way. So wipe the pin off, slide that back out, and I wipe it off with a wet wipe, and we just check that we have good flow and good dottage. And there we go. So just working from the centre, place the dot, squeeze, and then lift straight up for a perfect dome. And once you've done these, you need to set the card aside, preferably for an hour or so before you touch it again, so that the dots can set. Don't be tempted to speed up the heating with a heat tool, or the drying with a heat tool, because I've noticed that you end up with a reduced dome and crinkles. So I tend to do this last thing at night, pop the cards aside, and in the morning you've got your perfect pearlescent domes. And I'm using the dark bronze pearlescent PVA from Cosmic Shimmer to do these dots. Quick spin round. So you could carry on to embellish this with pieces of ribbon, or perhaps a pre-printed greeting or sentiment. But as it stands, it's quite a contrasting, suitable for a male really, I guess, classic craft on brown on white mask card.